Hello and welcome. This is an interview on LVT Halo with Tashi of 343 Industries, specifically with the HCS team. It's been a tumultuous last couple months after the end of a fantastic season one of HCS. Worlds was incredible, and there was a lot of hype going into the next season. We had plans that were ready in place for pre-events for Charlotte, and then the silence kind of kept growing, and there was a certain uneasiness throughout the entire scene about what is going to happen. And well, finally today was the day where we got the HCS roadmap, long awaited, but we still have plenty of questions in store. What about the roadmap is going to further our success in season 2? This system changes that we've seen to LAN and for the ecosystem, what does that mean for HCS? Just the general health of HCS and the grassroots scene now in season 2 after a really stressing and a stressful period in season 1. And then the partnership program, teams have left, new teams have come. What is in the future for HCS? And finally, we're going to get into the nitty gritty about what the relationship between the ranked modes and HCS is, how we can see changes made in the future. That's what's in store for you today. And our guest of honor is Tashi. I'd like to bring him in now, and let's get this going. Tashi, you're looking good, man. Hey,
thank you.
The backwards hat, the mustard shirt. Love to see you on the show today, Tashi. Before we start, I just want to give you a chance to introduce yourself. What's your role over at 343 and HCS, and just to give yourself an opener for the chat today.
Cool. Well, first, shout out to you guys at LVT for having me and setting up this interview and just allowing us to have a nice kind of fireside conversation about all things HCS. So I've been looking forward to this. I know Toolez, we've been working on this in the background for a while. So, I'm excited that we get to sit down again and chat. For those who don't know me, my name is Tashi. I'm the Halo Esports lead at 343 Industries. And so I oversee the HCS program, the HCS team, and all the things we do there.
Awesome, Tashi. It's been a stressful last couple months with everything that's changed, right? The end of season 1, season 2 in place, and I think a lot of people were starting to get worried by the lack of communication or just an uneasiness with no roadmap coming out. Finally, the roadmap is here, but it didn't come without some drama. The tournament from last weekend, I guess for this weekend, moved another week. Now it's on pace with the Super Bowl. Valentine's Day is also there. I know all of us with significant others are kind of feeling the hurt a little bit. But can you give us a little bit of an insight as to why the tournament this weekend got moved?
Yeah, so first, just want to say that we had no intention, obviously, of scheduling things over other big events. And usually when we build out our roadmap, we look at, Super Bowl, holidays, things like that to make sure that we're avoiding. And, we were obviously steered clear of that coming into last week. And then, we announced that the dates had to move. So to provide some more insights into why, putting together all of these events and tournaments, both online and LANs, for an entire roadmap, it takes coordination of a ton of different people and a lot of different partners that are involved. And, it's obviously like a multi-step process. And, we try to line everything up to make sure that, all the work is completed before things start. And unfortunately, we just missed the mark and had to, we're forced to push out the dates. So, again, like I said in the tweet, just apologies for the, hassle that this is going to cause. And I'm sure the frustration that it has caused already. But, we are looking forward to starting the season and kicking things off leading into Charlotte.
Right. Can you go into any sort of specifics on certain things that have been holding up the next season of play? I know that it's probably a minefield of what you can and can't talk about, but are there any specific things that have really been holding back these announcements for season 2 that are finally been, satisfied?
Yeah, I think going into Worlds, it was our intention to share at least the first part of the roadmap, right? And I think we did that with the Optic event, which obviously had to get moved. I'm sure we'll talk about that later. The SSG event, and then, the Charlotte Major. And so coming out of that, we knew we had the next few months to lock everything and announce in time before Charlotte. And so, I think, fans are obviously clamoring for more information and they wanted to book their travel, which honestly, we're very thankful that people were so excited and clamoring for the roadmap. But yeah, it is a huge kind of multi-step process to put together an entire roadmap. But our intentions were to make sure that we had it out before Charlotte, and not just days before, but weeks in advance. And so we did that. But obviously, fans wanted it sooner, as we know, and I think also probably wanted more communication along the way. So I think good kind of insights and learnings for us. But we are glad that we have the entire roadmap out there starting today.
Well, okay. I think if we can, I'd love to get an image of this roadmap up, just because this roadmap, there's some controversial things that have changed. First, we've gotten rid of regional events. No regionals. We're replacing them with global invitationals. Can you maybe speak a little bit as to what led to that decision?
Yeah, I can touch on that. And I think it's part of a larger story. So I might actually, in this, hit on other questions you might have. For us, we really want to focus on sustainability for Halo Esports. And I think this goes across the entire esports industry. How do we ensure that year after year, Halo Esports will be there with a roadmap like you saw today? And, fans, players, and partners, everyone can rely on, Halo Esports will be there. And we're also working on the game and whatnot alongside of it. So, going into year 2, we made sure we were taking a very strict approach to which parts and components of the roadmap from year 1 were performing the best, right? If you go back to 2019, 2020, 21, we were still kind of building the roadmap in a vacuum, leading up to the launch of Halo Infinite. And now with the game having released, we're able to see, okay, how are the Pro Series performing? How is regional events performing? How are, the majors performing? All these things. And then going into year 2, we wanted to make sure that we were focusing our efforts on the things that were going to drive the biggest impact on the league and on the entire ecosystem. And for us, that obviously you can see it in the roadmap, kind of led us to having events in the United States. Now, obviously, it's still important that we have representation from players from around the world, and so I think one of the, I would call it an improvement of the roadmap that we have for year 2, is that every event will feature teams from every region, which is something we didn't have in year 1. And so you'd have events like, let's call it the European Regional, which, not taking away the importance of what that was for that region. Obviously, we had that event for a reason. But for the entire Halo esports scene, it was kind of like a thing that was happening on the side, and it was really just important for the European players. But now at each of these events, you'll have things that are impacting the entire global scene. And what's also as exciting is for each region in year 1, you travel to a maximum, I think it was 5 events. And now with all of them being global, a player from each region will have the opportunity to travel to 6 events. So, obviously some trade-offs there, already seeing the feedback, and we knew, the lack of international events was going to kind of hit those players in those regions. So, we understood that. Again, our aim was for sustainability long term, and we do have ambitions to expand and bring events back to those regions.
Right. I think it's interesting that you talk about creating something sustainable by seeing successes from last year, right? And you saw that the American events were successful. And I want to really hammer in on what you're talking about, how the regional events felt like a sideline thing for the rest of the Halo scene that wasn't involved with that region. To me, that speaks more of a failure to market those events or to make them more prominent in the scene. Whereas I think a lot of players from those regions would say, okay, well, why don't we have a major in our region where instead of European teams being invited to go to NA, we have NA teams and ANZ teams being invited to go to Europe, and we build in a more sustainable system for European majors and to have more international events. And really, was it too risky to make that sort of play? Is there plans for that to come back? Like, I do think it's been a huge disservice to the international scene for them not to have these events to go to.
Yeah, I would push back on calling it a failure on marketing. I don't think, simply increasing marketing means that you're going to get the same attendance, viewership, and, all of the other goals that we have. At the end of the day, there are, a ton of players in the United States and viewers there. And doesn't matter how well or made aware of the event that they have, it's, might not be something that they're interested in. And we've seen that consistently throughout the year. So, I think high level for us, this isn't us, intending to abandon those events or anything like that. It's still important that they're part of it. And in fact, I'm sure we'll get into this some more, but there were plans to have an event in Europe, and that was going to be the second major. And then with how things worked out with the Optic event, we made a pivot in the end there. So we can get into that now, or we can get into it later. But again, this wasn't us like saying wanting to abandon any of the other regions. It is important to us, and obviously, a lot of fans from those regions are feeling like that's not entirely true in the roadmap that they see. But to your question, long term, we do want to get back to having more regional events.
Right. I guess I think we should just dive into it right now since we're on the topic, because
Okay.
Optic obviously was supposed to be a preseason event as like a hype up build up for season 2. It gets turned into a major. I think a lot of people are excited to have an Optic gaming major because there's a lot of fans of Optic gaming. But you did say it. I don't know if it necessarily came at a cost. Like, was it a cost? Did you guys like have to choose between a European event and a major hosted by Optic? What was the decision basis to make that pivot?
So there are a lot of different factors that went into it. So as we were planning, this is after the World Championship, we were looking to have one of the majors in Europe. And then, in working with the partner teams, they were expressing more and more interest in running live events for Halo. And then we saw the, Optic event had to be postponed. And so we kind of saw these things coming together, these kind of opportunities. And again, with our, interest in wanting to be kind of strict in ensuring that, all of our events have, sustainability in mind and wanting to hit our goals the hardest. We saw this as a good, call it a 1+1=3 opportunity to combine all of these different factors together with what turned into the Optic major. So, we're really excited about the Optic major. We think Optic does an awesome job running a lot of different events, and obviously sad that the invitational preseason invitational couldn't happen, but we think the major is going to be really epic.
Right. I think it's cool that we're gonna have an Optic gaming major, but why did the Optic event get canceled in the first place? I think there was a lot of controversy around that because it seemed as if there was never intention for that event to ever start in the first place from either side. Like, team tickets didn't really go on sale on time. There wasn't really any promotional lead up to it as like people were predicting for there to be. Like, what led to the decision of the Optic major being canceled? Not the Optic preseason to be canceled, and then how did the conversation about, okay, we need to reschedule this needs to turn into a major, how did that specifically come to arise?
Yeah, so I would push back on the note about the intention. We wouldn't have announced it if there wasn't an intent to have it. We were working closely with Optic behind the scenes and putting the event together. I think the biggest hurdle was getting all of the invited teams that we wanted to have out there to make this a real premium event experience. And I think with it being in the off season, the closeness to the holidays, and all of the roster shuffle that was happening during the scene, a lot of the teams just weren't able to make it happen. And so rather than, and we went down the rabbit hole with Optic on a lot of different ideas of how to keep the event, but still try to make it a great experience. And I think ultimately where both parties netted out is, we want to focus on delivering something great rather than just kind of like, having something kind of limp out the door. So obviously, unfortunate circumstances. I think we made the right decision, however, and then the opportunity kind of presented itself in the roadmap to pivot to what is an Optic major. and we went for it.
Right. I do want to, I think there is something great about turning this preseason event into a major. I would say that I think it's kind of a benefit in disguise because, like you were saying, like teams weren't really organized at that point, and I think a lot of people are going to be really excited to go to an optic themed major because, I mean, the green wall does absolutely show up at every moment. But I think there is sort of a precedent that's been set of what a major event should feel like. Is that major event feel, format, responsibilities going to change between, let's say, Charlotte and Arlington because it is a themed major? What are the differences between a regular major and a major that's been supported and themed for a specific HCS partner team?
Yeah, so I think from a format perspective, it'll be the same. We'll have an open bracket, we'll have a pool play and championship bracket, and a stellar broadcast to showcase it all. So that's not going to change. I think some of the differences you'll see, one is around administration. So because Optic are hosting the event, we're not having them run tournament administration just to avoid any conflict of interest. So, HCS will be owning that entirely with likely an independent party that will come in and host the administration. That way, all of the fans, players, and teams can, kind of rest at ease that there won't be any kind of like foul play or anything like that just because Optic are, hosting the event. And I think for us, like, we want to lean into all of the things that make Optic special, right? We're in their arena, in their backyard. We'll have all of their epic fans there. And, we want to get creative with how we can work with the different folks who are part of the Optic organization, either through content or talent or just general event segments and things like that. To really make it feel like, it's as epic as an HCS major that you would expect, but it's kind of got that Optic flavor that people know and love.
I mean, that's a great point. I think it's great for competitive integrity to say that the adminning is not going to be done by Optic themselves. I think that's a great aspect to bring in. But it sounds like everything else outside of the format of the event, how a major should be expected, how to be run from the format and administration side, everything else is going to be on Optic's responsibility, which I think is going to be unique. Am I getting that right? I just want to kind of spit that back out just because it's like I want to make sure that's exactly what's happening. Like the broadcast, the experience, the fan experience of being there, the boost, like that's specifically Optic oriented, and they're going to be in control of that aspect of the event.
So a lot of details we're still figuring out, but the spirit of it is, yes, the event is operated by Optic. It is an official HCS event, and so we're going to be working with them, and I already have been hand in hand to make sure that it meets the quality bar that fans and players expect, and it also still respects the spirit of the Halo Championship Series and the tournament, the competition, and what it means to be an official HCS event.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great clarification. I think a lot of people will be taken aback by you saying there's still a lot to figure out. But I will say, it's in June, right? It's still a long ways away, and things do take time. I don't think it should be expected at this point for people to have a full-fledged event ready, planned. There's still a lot of a road to be built on that, and I'm sure we'll have a conversation once again when we get a little bit closer to talk about those trials that are coming up. I want to go back to our previous
interview. Can I interject real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
Just on the comment about taken aback by not having all the details figured out. Right now, the team's main focus is Charlotte, right? That's 3 weeks in front of us, and we need to make sure that's as epic as an event as it can be. We also learned a lot running the first year of HCS. Those events we typically plan out about in true detail about 3 months in advance. So we're confident that we've got the time to deliver and execute on a great experience.
Yeah, I think that's perfectly said, to be honest. It takes time, but it doesn't, I think, take as much time. And I think it's great that we're keeping sole focus on one major at a time, because that major needs to be as good as possible. I want to go back to a conversation that we had in July last time you were on the show, Tashi, when you were talking about the roadmap and in specific parts about how much time is in between each season, basically. if we can roll that.
Generally, you need some space between events. You can't have open events like every 3 weeks, because players are then, you're cannibalizing the scene. They're going to have to decide between one or the other, and ultimately just makes both products weaker. So when timing doesn't work out, it's like, hey, we've already kind of locked in this major, or there's this other event that's been locked in, and so now when this other event comes in that we want to do, it's only available in this like 2-week time frame, or this one weekend. And that's what I mean when timing doesn't work out. It's like it's too close to the other events. It would damage the entire roadmap. And also sometimes from a format perspective, like, doesn't make sense. Like, why would you have a regional after a major, things like that. So those are some of the things that happen when putting together a roadmap.
So, I mean, I hear that conversation we had last time when I was re-listening to our interview in preparation, and then when I did see the roadmap, I looked at it and I was like, well, I feel as if maybe, you know, we have a summer that's jam-packed with action, right? That spacing that you were talking about isn't quite there. We're also seeing, once again, it was an unprecedented break between majors last season, with the first one in December, the second one in May. That same time period of a lapse in between majors is here with February to June. What led to the majors being so separated this time, and also just packing the schedule towards summer this time around in season 2?
So a few things to comment on. I think in year one, worth mentioning that the events that we had were all opens. And so when I talked a lot about worrying about player travel and getting from one event to make sure we're not cannibalizing that, I think that's remedied a bit by how the majors are spaced out. But also with the global invitationals, it kind of solves for that. So slightly different kind of structure all up. In terms of the time between the majors, I think when we built the roadmap in year one, we were really focused, or where we started, I should say, was around the DreamHack events, and those were kind of like the tent poles. And then we kind of moved the majors around there, and then what we found was, it caused the roadmap to not flow as smoothly as we wanted to. Additionally, and I think I mentioned this last interview, we wanted to make sure we had something shortly after the launch of the game, and we did that in December, and that was awesome. Raleigh was kick-ass, but we also wanted to make sure that the World Championship was roughly around kind of the anniversary of the franchise, and so that's where we landed in October. And what that ended up doing in the first year was having this really 11-month long season. And we just knew that wasn't the kind of like steady state, and not really sustainable either for us or for players that we wanted to get into. And so to fix that, it means we started later than we did in year one, right? Where we had basically qualifiers right after the game came out in November, to now qualifiers happening in February. And so what you're going to see going forward is our intention to stick to a kind of an 8-month cadence going forward for HCS, and having a few months in the kind of off season for players to recuperate, and obviously the team to recuperate, and for rosters to shuffle, and the game to get updated, and all those things that happen in off season. And we're more like kind of other esports in that regard as well. So so that touches on kind of some of the issues that we had in year one, and how they're kind of mitigated in year two. A lot of the same stuff, still worked out in year two when it comes to booking venues, however. So, we generally have an understanding of the types of regions that we want to go into. And by regions, I mean parts of the country, and time frames that we want to have everything in. We know, hey, we want to have the first major in February. Okay, let's go look out and see what's available. And there were actually venues that were available over the Super Bowl weekend, but we obviously passed on those and selected Charlotte. And then we looked at, okay, roughly October is when we want to have the World Championship again. We know we want it to be in Seattle, but we started in year two focused really on the majors, right? And locking in those as quickly as we can, so that the rest of the roadmap can fall around it. But again, like I mentioned, like, it's not entirely possible for us to exactly pinpoint this is the city, this is the weekend, just based on venue availability. So we do our best with what's available and trying to land in the best kind of cities and states at the right time that makes sense. And so I don't think you're ever going to get a perfect, like, if 7 weeks is ideal, you're not necessarily always going to get every 7 weeks is the gap. Sometimes it'll be 8, sometimes it'll be 5, 6, whatever it might be. So it kind of flexes in that way. I think one thing we are excited about, however, for year 2 is addressing that feedback of just how much kind of dead time there was. And it goes back to what we were talking about, with the regional events. From our end, and for obviously the communities in those regions, there were events, right? The team was traveling around the world and operating these events, but for the majority of the scene, it felt like there was nothing going on. And so that was a very clear signal to us as well that, like, events in North America and US, are really, the heartbeat of the entire ecosystem. And so when we look at now in year 2, what we've got lined up with having events in June, July, August, September, and then October, we feel like the majority of the roadmap is very kind of bang bang, as you mentioned, and should be insanely hype.
Yeah, I think that's a great point when you talked about the logistics of making an event. Can you give us a little insight of how this planning stage sort of started with like at what point was Charlotte written down as like, okay, this is our place, this is our event? How far in advance are you guys pinpointing these dates and these cities for majors?
Yeah, so it started as a process back in like spring, summer of last year with kind of evaluating the performance of the roadmap so far, which is obviously tricky because we hadn't had all of the events taking place yet. We had the majors, we had online stuff. So we had a kind of a good pulse and a good indication of where things were going. And we had the supers as well. So we had, a good part of the story, but we didn't have the whole story. Obviously, World Championship was still to come. So we really started with like evaluating, based on our goals, what are the components of the roadmap that are having the biggest impact. And obviously, we need to look at the cost of these things as well. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense if something is high cost but has a low impact towards our goals. So, we looked at it with that lens and always wanting to be kind of as efficient and cost effective as we can with what we're doing. Again, like long-term sustainability is really important for us. But it started, really in earnest in the summer and leading into, Orlando and Worlds with pinpointing the majors, right? Starting with Esports Engine and determining, okay, what is the length of the season? What months do we want to start and end in? What are the kind of key cities or states that we want to be in? And then, they will go survey all of the different venues in that area for those timeframes. And then it's kind of a process of figuring out, okay, are we going to go here? Are we going to go there? And trying to nail those down while also still kind of evaluating the rest of the roadmap. And so, there's not like that's where it started, but it's obviously like a long multi-month process that kind of, ebbs and flows and goes in some different directions. And, we didn't anticipate that the Optic event would have to be postponed. And obviously that changed some of our plans. So we had to be nimble and pivot and, make kind of decisions for what we felt like would be best for the entire ecosystem. So, there's a lot of kind of different ways that the format goes into, but, we think we've landed in a strong place for year 2.
I mean, overall, I think there's definitely some disappointments for people when it comes to, not having internationals, regionals kind of being gone. But I do think there's a lot to be taken with some happiness, right? The global invitationals, I think, are a really exciting new event. 16 team invitationals are going to be fast paced broadcast wise. They're going to be high octane competition. The new events with teams like Space Station Gaming having a global invitational at their venue over in Salt Lake, I think is going to be really fun, and we're going to see more online events. So I definitely see that as a big plus. And moving into that, what are some of these, what are you excited about in season 2? We talk about the roadmap as a whole, but what new projects is there, anything upcoming in this next roadmap that's really like, this is going to blow people's minds, this is what you should be getting excited for?
One thing I'm particularly excited about is the partner team events, right, with Optic and Space Station, like you just mentioned. We had talked about how important the partnership program was with the teams. And, we were really blown away by the level of interest from the teams to get more and more involved. And, we're taking a big leap in running official HCS with these partners, official HCS events with these partners. And we're excited to see what they all kind of bring to the table. Obviously Optic have their own flavor and the kind of event experience that they have, and obviously there's amazing clips on Twitter and whatnot of Hitch beating the drums and just the crowd going nuts. And obviously they have just awesome creative teams, so we're excited to put on a kind of really unique type of major for them. And then I think people were really delighted by the space station snowdown that just took place last month, and really, I think, impressed. And we were as well with Space Station's ability to kind of entertain on a different level, but still make things that were grounded in the community. It's very clear that they understand kind of who the important people are in the community to be faces and representatives of the ecosystem, and how to remain true to what this community holds near and dear. They're also just like really funny. So their skits were unbelievable. I think it was like 45 minutes of content that they made just for little interstitial bits. And so I think, seeing what they do and what they bring to the table creatively will be, really exciting. So, I think that's one thing that I'm particularly excited about, seeing how it goes and working with these teams in a totally new way, because I think long term there's kind of big potential in bringing more and more teams to the fray in this type of way. And I think a lot of people were asking for teams to get more involved in the ecosystem in year one, and I think we've kind of blown the doors off the hinges in year two, and a lot of these teams are stepping up, and you'll see more from all the other teams. But these teams are stepping up to really be part of the Halo ecosystem.
I mean, I think it's a great point to say that there's some great things that are happening in season 2 that didn't happen in season 1. I kind of want to revisit season 1 just for a second and kind of get a perspective from HCS. What were your high moments from season 1? What were some of the lower things? Like I want to go one high moment. What was your favorite thing about season 1? What was the lowest point for HCS in season 1?
Highest point for me personally, is that what you're asking? Like me personally?
Yeah, I mean, like you as in a leader for the team, right? So like, I mean, obviously like you as an individual, that's great, but like for HCS and the direction, the goals that we're going for.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you clarified, because who cares about my personal opinion? Okay, so I think Worlds for us was the cherry on top of the whole season that we really wanted it to be. The tournament was absolutely incredible. We had an amazing audience there. It was the biggest in the entire year. We were able to have this kind of Halo Fest, vision executed there. Heard so many stories of fans who were, there because they loved Halo, not necessarily esports, but they kind of fell in love with the entire event experience. And, for us, it's a lot about community building, right? When you come out to these events, we love to spend time with everyone there, and it's amazing to see kind of everyone sharing their passion for Halo by playing and watching and taking part in all the event activities. And I think Worlds was like the perfect culmination of all of that. You add in the community stage, Jen Taylor, Steve Downs being there. Worlds was just really special, and it really felt like for the first time we were able to kind of fulfill the dream and the promise of what we want the World Championship to be. So I would say that was definitely the high point. I think for us, the low point was overall stability that we saw early in the season, particularly with Raleigh. We were excited to kick off the first event, and then to be met with, disconnects and crashes and things like that. Obviously caused a lot of stress on the players and the viewers and us as well, and all the staff. And so, we were able to, improve things for the rest of the season and, make things a lot more stable. But I would say, that part of it was definitely the low point, I think, for us.
What changes from season 2? I mean, like going into season 2, I think stability, it was I mean, like you said, it was pretty bad in Raleigh. It got better throughout the season, but I still don't think it's necessarily at the point that people are happy with in the scene. What kind of updates can we expect in the future from 343, from HCS, to make sure that delays because of instability in the game are going to be mitigated? Is there anything big down the pipeline that you're like, this is going to be it? We're not going to have any more of these stalls after this update gets pushed?
No, I think for us, it's less about this one moment that everything kind of hangs its hat on. Like for something like stability, it's typically not how it works. There are multiple different issues that cause crashes, especially on PC when you look at the different types of CPUs and GPUs and different types of issues that you could possibly run into. So really, it's just kind of chipping away and at this problem, which I think we were able to do in year one, and we worked closely with all of our partners on the hardware side as well to make sure that we were testing and running things as efficiently as we could. So we'll be taking those things forward into year two. But I also think from just a high level game side, like the studio is really focused on delivering on all the things that players want and need, and obviously stability is an important part of that.
Right, and I think there's obviously things that can be improved. We're going to get to those points. I will say we're going to take a quick 3-minute, 5-minute break. When we come back, we're going to be moving on from the roadmap. We're going to be talking about some of the changes that were made to the LAN and ecosystem when you do go to events, such as the open bracket being moved to one day and other various topics like that. So in the welcome back, everyone. Thank you for watching, and I am back, and I'm going to bring it back Tashi with me right now as we move into our second segment of today's interview. And I wanted to really hammer in on some of the changes that have been made to the ecosystem and how LANs are going to operate. And I think one thing that amateur players all around are really upset about is the changes towards open bracket, and open bracket becoming a one-day event, Friday only for the open bracket. What led to this decision to move open bracket to Friday only?
So a couple things to start with. One is, it's always our intention to try to provide a great experience for the open bracket community. I think in Halo 5, we had a lot of events that didn't have open bracket, portions of them, and kind of lesson learned. And that's why we, always have our majors with an open bracket. So I just want to make it clear that this is an important part of the ecosystem for us. And I think, especially in a world where honestly there's less of this in esports, and open bracket that kind of feeds into the main pro bracket, we know it's important and kind of authentic to Halo, and we want to support it in the best way that we can. So what led specifically for Charlotte and the way we're looking at things is essentially the format and the schedule is all pulling at each other in different directions. So you have the open bracket tournament, which obviously needs to feed into the pool play and the championship bracket. And then we have pool play on the first day. And we also have a certain amount of hours a day that we feel, one, comfortable for players and teams and staff to be a part of. We also have venue restrictions that we need to abide by. And so there's a lot of different factors that kind of play into this. On top of that, we want to make changes to the broadcast schedule to try to drive, more viewers, drive more exciting matches. And, with how the schedule kind of shaked out and all these, I would say, competing goals, that's one of the compromises that was made in order to try to accommodate this entire event schedule. And so, I think for us, like, we want to go to Charlotte and put our best foot forward, but we're going to be, boots on the ground, talking to all the fans and players and getting an understanding of what the experience was like. And, if we feel like there's opportunity and there's a real need for us to make adjustments in the future, we're absolutely open to doing that. Again, like, we're trying to, hit on our key goals. Like, we don't have a personal axe to grind against open bracket players or anything like that. So, we're going to continue to iterate and do our best and try to deliver on a great experience.
Right. So we're going into this first event, like we're confirmed on one day. What made you guys stick with that gun? Unlike during the Worlds format, like, we saw drastic changes made to Worlds format just a couple weeks beforehand after the community was like, we don't really like this sort of format. We would like to see a change to this. Format was changed. I think that was unbelievable that we were able to have that much flexibility. What's the difference between this change of open bracket being moved to 1 day versus the change of the Worlds format where we saw extra time being added because of the extra team making it out of pools?
Yeah, well, I think it's important to note that the formats and events were totally different. Um, for Worlds, there wasn't an open bracket to work with. We did have the playing stage, but it's also a 4-day event. So, kind of different circumstances across the different events. And, I think for us, it's always going to be what opportunities do we have if there is feedback to make adjustments. And there was that for Worlds. And like you mentioned, I'm glad we were able to go do that. So, I think for Charlotte open bracket, not all of those same circumstances and opportunities play into the event. But like I said, we're going to always try to improve the experience holistically. And so, we're going to take a look at, you know, did the bets that we made on broadcast and that experience pay off? Was it worth kind of the trade-offs in other parts of the event? So, it is new. There's a lot of new components, and it's important that we, um, I don't want to say try it out, but we execute the event with our best foot forward, and then we kind of take the feedback and make adjustments if we can and need to going forward.
Right. I think one of the biggest changes, right, not only is open bracket being moved to 1 day, it's also not feeding into the championship bracket directly anymore, if I have it right. So the 4 teams from open bracket will qualify into pools. 4 teams only for pools, right? And then no team from the elimination bracket of the open bracket will make it into championship bracket anymore. I think as a player who would compete in the open bracket, I think a lot of players see that opportunity to make it in the championship bracket as a big deal to find themselves with a future in pro teams. It's a scouting opportunity, right? It's to get better placements. I think a lot of people feel like, okay, 4 teams are making it out. That's the most competitive it's ever going to be. But I almost feel like it's coming at like a severe cost for opportunities of amateur players in the scene. And what opportunities are there going to be for amateur players to prove themselves to kind of rectify this sort of issue where 4 open bracket teams just isn't a lot of teams to be having an opportunity to be on broadcast in general. Normally we're seeing a lot more opportunity for open bracket teams, and like that feels like it's gone away. And I'm interested to see how it's going to work for this first event. I have a feeling that it's not going to be as well received as I think many would like it to be. And I'm just interested to see where your stance is on these opportunities that have been, I think, being taken away from open bracket teams.
Yeah, I think totally understand and hear the feedback. We're not ignorant, and it's definitely not falling on deaf ears. I think for us, that opportunity we feel like is still there and still has a clear path into pool play and then eventually champ bracket. Like we said when we kind of announced the format, we are putting a greater emphasis on just competitiveness of the tournament. In year 1, I think we were very, I would say, open, right? Raleigh, I think, had a 32 team championship bracket. We said, okay, this is the first year, brand new game. We want to make sure competitively we're putting as many kind of players into the pool on LAN. And I don't mean pool as in like pool play, but into like the bucket, if you will, to really see how things shake out, not only open bracket to pool play and champ bracket, but also within each regions against one another. And, based on what we had learned in year 1 and kind of changes we had made throughout the year and how we saw the World's kind of format and broadcast experience play out too, all those things combined, we wanted Charlotte to move to a more competitive and testing format, which we feel like, yes, like there are kind of fewer spots if you're an open bracket player. But at the same time, it requires just more a better performance to meet those. So it's a trade-off in one direction or another. And like I mentioned, like we're going to keep a close eye on all the results and see if those trade-offs were ultimately worth it. I think one thing that's important to note here is, like I mentioned, with open bracket and pool play and championship bracket, and having this really premium broadcast while also trying to show as many matches as we can, they a lot of times compete with each other. And so if you put in one area, you're going to have to take away from another. And, I think the pendulum swung in one direction in year one, and we're happy with the results, but we wanted to see what improvements we can make for year two. And so, like I said, like, we're going to review all the feedback and the results. And, if we feel like there's opportunity and a need to make changes, then we're going to explore that.
So open bracket being moved one day, I get all that. The competition's going to improve. As a player who would compete in the open bracket, how I feel like it's a little bit demotivating at this point, because like one day, like I think that's all understandable for teams. You want the competition to be better, but like the open bracket's still on the Xbox Series X's throughout the entire tournament. I still feel as if they're being treated not as like secondary, but there's not being as much injected for these open bracket teams. Like, is there a future where HCS starts to bring in PCs for the open bracket, where we get them off the Xbox Series X's, where they can kind of have the same sort of premium feel that the championship bracket has with the PC play?
So specifically on PC play versus console, first, the game runs really great on Xbox Series X. It is super stable. You still get 120 FPS. It is a great experience, and we do offer time for players to acclimate from the open bracket to a pool playing on PC. And so, no doubt there are players who play at home, and when they go to a LAN, from home on PC, they want to play. So we understand that. It's not falling on deaf ears. Ultimately, the reason why we decided to go with consoles in the open bracket was for the amount of stations that we have and all the different teams that we were supporting. Consoles in the open bracket would allow us to, ensure we had a great competitive experience, and we were, on schedule. And we were, of course, avoiding any of the issues that could come up with PC, and you have that many players and that many different variables. And, obviously, I think, based on what we saw in Raleigh to start with, some of the issues we saw with PC stability, I think we made the right decision. I think if we had, 300 plus PCs in the open bracket, I don't know if that event would have finished nearly as competitively as it did. And so, there's obviously trade-offs again to everything, all the decisions that we make. But, we still think the Xbox Series X provides a super competitive and fair experience.
But don't you think there's maybe a compromise that could be struck between the open bracket teams that, because everyone that's playing in the open bracket, for the most part, playing on PCs that are getting more than 120 frames. Because yes, the game does run really well on the Xbox Series X, but the reality is that players that are playing at home on 240 frames, at 165, at 144, moving down to 120 is a huge disadvantage for them. And I don't necessarily think that open bracket teams think that every single station should be PCs, but I do think that maybe after you get to a certain point in the bracket, like let's say winners bracket round 4, or like when you're getting ready to compete for pools, that those matches be moved to PC matches, that maybe there's a feature station for the teams in open bracket. Is there a future that you can foresee in season 2 where maybe there's a compromise to be made with open bracket teams, where PCs can be implemented at a certain stage within the tournament, where you don't need to make necessarily the infrastructure investment to have an entire PC open bracket, but that teams don't feel as if they're stuck and chained to the Xbox Series X, where it's a subpar experience compared to what they have at home?
Yeah, I would push back on the disadvantage part. It's important to us that all the players in the open bracket are playing on the same equipment, and same when they move into pool play, they all play on the same equipment there. So I hear your point overall on it being different, but all the players against each other are playing with the same, um, uh, properties, or whatever you want to call it, the same equipment, the same settings, all of that. So hear your point overall. And, maybe there is a world where there's a middle ground where part of the open bracket, like the later stages you mentioned, goes to PC. I think at this point, we're not ready to do something like that for Charlotte, but, it's a good note and something that we're happy to talk about, as a group.
right? And I think that's the biggest thing with the open bracket teams is I think they feel as if they don't have a line of communication for when these changes happen, right? Because they're kind of sudden. They're used to one thing and then they get thrown into another, and it's the expectation that they have kind of isn't met. Is there a road where you see a little maybe more feedback being taken from the open bracket teams, from the teams that aren't getting these travel stipends, to maybe making changes in the future?
Yeah, I think it's a good point. I think we can do better here. And my head is already going towards just having more regular touch points with kind of some of the amateur player community leaders, whatever you want to call them. I think we'll take that in for Charlotte and talk to people on the ground, like I mentioned, but also after the event. And we'll have some time for before the optic major, so there might be an opportunity to make improvements, and we're certainly going to seek those out, of course. But obviously, no promises on changes from one event to another. But at least you have my word that we're always going to try to improve the experience where we can.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, and I think it's these are conversations that need to be had, and I think we'll see improvements in the future. And one of the improvements that I would definitely want to see is kind of the transparency with the crowdfunding situation, to be honest. I think a lot of pros had the expectation of crowdfunding for Worlds. They were seeing it as a big event. I felt like a lot of the marketing leading up to season one was talking about crowdfunding and how much of an impact it was going to play and how big the prize pool was going to be at Worlds. And then when it was pulled away at the last second, where they were like, oh, this is just going to be $1 million, I think a lot of the pro players felt betrayed. And now in your most recent blog, we talk about how crowdfunding has been put on hold. What sort of, can you kind of run us through the trials of this crowdfunding and why these changes are being made throughout season two?
Yeah, a few things I want to touch on. I think one, from an intention standpoint, we've always been, I say, passionate about crowdfunding, and myself personally, like, I'm a huge Dota fan, so seeing what they do with the international has definitely been inspiring. And we did a lot of cool stuff for Halo 5 as well. So from an intentional standpoint, there is a strong desire to bring this kind of back into the HCS ecosystem and let the community kind of support each other in this cool way. I think where we missed the mark in year one was there was really no clear connection between the game and how it worked and how it ultimately went to the league. And that opacity is something that obviously erodes the trust that fans and players have with what's going on. And I think for us, we want to really ensure that that strong connection in the game is there first before we bring it back and it feels like a real first class citizen. So that's our kind of stance. One thing I do want to clarify and touch on is, I can definitely see how players maybe have gotten their expectations for Worlds, set high, especially after, Halo 5. But, we did not come out and say the Worlds prize pool was going to be X amount after crowdfunding or anything like that. So I just want to make sure that was clear. And to speak on the kind of the pros impact, we definitely, understand how they were feeling, especially that close to the event, feeling like the rug was kind of pulled underneath them. And I addressed it to them directly at the player meeting at Worlds, and especially for the communication, apologize for how that was handled. So we're that experience and feedback is definitely not falling on deaf ears there. And the last thing, just to comment on this, I think what we saw was early on, we were boosting the prize pool for the majors and whatnot, and then we kind of pivoted towards supporting more kind of events and whatnot. So I think, as we look forward, we'll kind of look at both of those strategies and see what is the best kind of way forward for when we do bring it back and have those stronger connections in the game.
I am reading the blog right now and what you wrote about crowdfunding, and you talk about there's going to be a pause on crowdfunding. what does a pause specifically mean? Does that mean that money that's being spent on skins in game now aren't being contributed to crowdfunding until this pause is uplifted? Or is it just a pause on that money being distributed through crowdfunding into events? Like what does that pause specifically mean for crowdfunding?
Yeah, I saw in the pre-conversation you were having with Brandon that there was some confusion here. So we actually went and just updated the blog so that it's super clear. So there's not going to be any crowdfunding for 2023, and it will come back when we have that stronger connection in the game. And we've got some ideas on what that could look like. And again, like our intention and ambitions are to have a really robust part of the program that does this. And the studio is also passionate about this kind of features in the game for things like charity as well. So it is important to the studio. No promises on when those in-game connections will come through, but that's our decision that we made for 2023.
So if I have this right, then it's a complete pause, right, on crowdfunding.
Yes. So if you purchase anything in the game, let's say today or tomorrow, it's not going to contribute towards HCS.
Okay, and it's like I think that's like a big disappointment for us. I think I understand like wanting to get it to a point. I would say just as a plea from the community, I think it would go a long ways if that money was still pooled aside and then was accumulating until the season in which it was to be brought back. Just because it feels like crowdfunding was an identity in season 1, and now that it's kind of gone in season 2, I think that it's kind of a huge blow for the entire scene, to be honest.
Yeah, I don't necessarily disagree, and I think if we can go back in time, we would have probably handled especially the communication differently. I think for us going forward, the message we got loud and clear was just more transparency around this, and I think those in-game connections that we want to add into the game over time will allow us to bring this back in a more rich kind of experience. So that's our kind of stance on crowdfunding at the moment.
Right, and I think what needs to be said is said. I think there will be a lot of time for people to really mull on this information and to see how that makes them feel. But to move on just a little bit, crowdfunding obviously on its pause. I did notice that we're also reducing the amount of stipends that are being given out to events. If I'm correct, I believe in previous events we were seeing more travel being paid for like ANZ teams, Mexico in particular. Now it's only one Mexico team being flown out to pools, and then 2 to the open bracket. And then on the invitationals, only one Mexico team, one Australian team. Can you give us some insights as to those changes that were made with travel stipends?
Yeah, I think predominantly this comes from a competitive perspective. After the first year, we were able to get a better understanding of where the regions stack up against one another. And, I think I'd have to go back and look at numbers, compare apples to apples, but I think it's very similar, if not the same, as the total level of support that we had in year 1. I think for Mexico specifically, what we found in year 1 is that for every single event, it was almost all the teams had issues with passports and visas, and that was having a competitive integrity impact. A lot of players, particularly in the open bracket, complained to us about this team from Mexico that now is this different roster than what actually qualified, but was still getting pool play. And it was honestly, very challenging for us to figure out, okay, what is the best kind of pool for them to be in to still try to maintain the competitive integrity, and without a clear line of sight into resolution for those, as well as based on the performances, like I mentioned at the top. We made adjustments to the teams that were getting travel stipends compared to others. So those are all kind of the factors that went into that overall. I think for us, we're going to continue to look at this year over year. And, if, the players in Mexico or any of the regions can get to a more kind of stable part where they're competing at a high level, but also able to reliably get to these events, then we're obviously going to take this kind of new information and see what adjustments need to be made.
Right. And with all these changes that are being made to the LAN and how the format itself is changing, how do you think this is going to impact viewership, just the viewing ability of players and, just competitive Halo fans? Is there going to be drastic changes between the viewing experience of LANs between season 1 and season 2?
I think for us, what we saw in year one was, really record viewership for Halo Esports. And I think we want to continue to do more of the same. So overall, I think there are some refinements that we want to make and ensure that the show is even better and we have more entertaining content and segments and things like that, and keeping a close eye on viewership and trying to enable more co-streamers for all our events like we did in year one. And we have really great Twitch drops that are coming for Charlotte that are totally new. So, we're going to keep pushing on all the different things that impact viewership, not only from just a fan watching experience, but also when it comes to, where you can watch, how you can watch. And on top of that, I think one of the things that I would say probably hurt viewership in year one that I think we've done a better job addressing so far is just updates to the content in the game. We have Empyrean coming in as well as Argyle. A lot of fans were asking for a 2 sniper map. So personally, I'm excited to see folks like, Lucid and Renegade go at each other on Empyrean / the pit. And I think that'll be a totally new kind of viewing experience that we have for year 2 in HCS. And we'll continue to make balance updates that like we have been so far this year, and just create a more exciting and competitive play experience. So, there's a lot of factors that go into viewership, and we're trying to push all of the different aspects forward.
Right. I think that was a big change that was made, right? The new maps being brought in and how the format of Halo is going to change moving forward. We've also seen that Plaza has been announced as a remake map coming into season 3. That's going to be added to rotation. Are we going to expect to see a lot of changes to the HCS format throughout the next season of HCS? Like, in season 2, are we going to be playing on mostly Forge maps by the end of it? Is there a plan to what is the plan for adding maps, adding content into the HCS rotation as the season goes on?
Yeah, so I think really all of that stems from the game itself, right? Of course. And what I'm particularly excited about is, the focus that the studio now has in delivering more content, delivering on things that fans want. And, obviously in year one, as a studio, we didn't quite meet that bar. And, I think going into the end of year one, we saw Forge get added. We saw, obviously with the winter update, we had the update in December, which brought in the custom game browser. We've made some updates in January, and I think, hopefully fans are starting to see that there's a more regular cadence of updates coming, and we're particularly very excited about season 3. You'll see the Shroud screen equipment come into play on competitive. You'll see that on live fire and streets, particularly for HCS, which is great. You'll see the Bandit come into play. So I think you've already seen some kind of more regular updates, and our intention is to put our heads down and get to work and continue to deliver on what fans and players want. And I think that will then dictate, and our pace there will dictate how that kind of impacts HCS. I think for us at a high level, what we want to do is ensure we're more quickly addressing player feedback as it comes up. I don't think we were able to adequately do this in year one, which is, no surprise. So as new, feedback comes up, or there's something that happens at a tournament, we want to more quickly address that feedback. And then generally we think, more content added to the rotation, both in terms of, maps, but also equipment and weapons and things like that, are generally just healthy for the entire game ecosystem. So, we want it to feel like from when you tune in from event to event that, it's not just the same old, story, right? It's not just like, okay, this one team is winning, they're best on these maps, and they're just going to keep winning for the rest of the year. I think it's important that we not only respond to player feedback to make the experience better for them, but we're also challenging players in different ways and really testing their competitiveness and providing an exciting platform for fans to watch and tune in and follow throughout the year.
Absolutely. Before we move on to our next section, I just want to say, is there any final statements that you want to make about the land changes that have been that we've seen, about things that are changing with the general format of HCS into season 2?
I think last thing I'll just reiterate is that we're going to keep a close ear to the ground and check the performance and see if there's room and opportunities and if there's a need to make any changes. So I would say look for me and Richie out on the floor at Charlotte. You can grab us at any moment and talk to us about the things. I'm sure we'll be reaching out to folks on Twitter afterwards as well, just to get more insights. So I'd say for us, like, we don't have a personal kind of axe to grind. We're still trying to deliver a great experience for everybody, but we also have to keep in mind, all the different conflicting goals and audiences that go with kind of big events like this. But for the open bracket community, particularly, like, having open brackets at Halo events is part of the identity even before HCS was a thing. And especially for me, as someone who played but was not good enough to be pro, like, the open bracket was how I personally was able to kind of stay in the scene. So, it's still an important part. I think it will always be an important part of Halo Esports.
Absolutely. Well, I'm gonna say right now we'll bookend that. We're gonna go to another quick break, just 3 minutes. Welcome back, everyone. My name is Toolez. I am joined with Tashi. We're doing an interview about the next season of HCS and all that goes into it. And I really want to hammer down on this next segment, Tashi, about the ranked experience and how it correlates to HCS. So on Twitter, you were saying that you're more involved, directly involved with the ranked multiplayer experience. What does that really mean for HCS, and what does that mean for your job, basally?
Well, first I want to touch on the poster. I saw that in the corner of my eye, and that's why I was smirking. So I gotta get more tape on that. Anyway, yes. So I think HCS year one was a resounding success, not only in our eyes but in the studio eyes. And I think it was very clear that we weren't meeting the needs of our competitive players, and we weren't organized in the right way to deliver on the needs, not only competitive players, but all of the players. And I think one of the changes was made was, adjusting or increasing my role, whatever you want to call it, to work more directly on the competitive side of the game experience and the ranked playlist. And what's exciting for me personally is I get to work with a lot of people more in depth on the multiplayer sandbox and the live team and all the people that really do the actual hard work and make the engine run. So for me, I think what you can expect is just a more kind of direct line between feedback and organization and decision making. So just to be super transparent and get into the weeds a bit, there is now a product around the ranked playlist and competitive experience. And my role is to be the product owner. And this means I'm accountable for, the experience all up. So what maps are people playing? What modes? What are the different weapons on the map and things like that? And addressing all of the feedback that fans and players have, and working with all the teams to ensure that we're delivering on this. And again, I think it's a testament to the focus on delivering for all of our players. And I think the competitive community now has, I would say, more of a seat at the table than prior in Halo Infinite, and honestly prior in Halo maybe ever. So I think if you're a competitive fan, either you watch HCS or you play the game, you play in the playlist, I think this is probably good news for you. And the team and all the teams are working super hard to deliver updates to all of our fans. And I think you've started to see some of that already this month, which is really exciting. and the team has just done a really kick-ass job of addressing some of the equipment and items on different forge maps. We've got the balance update coming in just a couple weeks, which is there's a lot of people that went into making that work. There's more updates coming in season 3. So yeah, ultimately I think I'd say really positive outlook you should have as a fan. And I think for anything competitive experience in the game, you can feel free to blow up my mentions about stuff like that, and hold me accountable to ensuring that we're trying to address the feedback as much as we can.
Well, I guess since you asked for it, this is me going to be trying to hold you accountable for a second, Tashi. Why is detachment in ranked? I feel like we went through this whole process before with the beginning of this game with Behemoth flag being in the start of the game. It felt like it took forever to get it removed, and it felt like things were going in the right direction with the ranked experience. But then we go and we get these exciting updates. We get new maps, Argyle, Empyrean, and then it always feels like whenever we take a step forward in that direction as the competitive community, we sort of take a step back. And I think most people in the competitive scene not happy with detachment. What's the reasoning behind detachment being in ranked? It feels as if there's this disconnect between the competitive community, which the ranked playlist is really, I guess, our haven, and what's being served to us. Why is there a difference between HCS and ranked at the moment?
Ultimately, it comes down to HCS rotation and HCS League having different goals than the ranked playlist. There are a lot of people in the ranked playlist who probably never heard of HCS. They don't watch, whatever it is. They just enjoy playing ranked Halo. And what we've heard, I think, universally from all players is, hey, we need more content. So we need more maps, we need more modes, we need more experiences. And I think it's important that we are servicing the needs of the ranked playlist. And again, that's not always in conjunction or in agreement with the HCS goals. Here's a good example. So it's not always isn't always a great moment to bring in a new map in the HCS roadmap, right? Sometimes we'll have a big update that drops close before a big event, and we don't want to just introduce it into the HCS and cause a huge mess in the scene. However, those people in the ranked playlists are still looking for more content. And so I don't think it would be in the best interest of the ranked playlist to hold this map back or this piece of content back until the HCS season is ready. Because again, it's not guaranteed that it would be, just a couple weeks. It could be months, right? Especially if you look at our roadmap for year 2, we've got events, basically every month in the second half of the year. So again, they have different goals. We definitely, understand the sentiment around, if you're an HCS player, you want to go into the ranked playlist and have it be 1-to-1. I know in Halo 5, we did a lot of that. But this isn't Halo 5, and we have different things that we need to go tackle. And so ultimately that's why they have different goals, and we need to, where it makes sense, and where it kind of is required in the roadmap, we need to ensure that we're addressing the goals as best as we can.
Right. So then how do we, because not only are we HCS players, right, we're also the players that are looking for that ranked experience. And although I think our main core fundamentals are aligned a little bit differently than the casual Halo player, I still think that ranked we're still a member of the ranked playlist, right? And I think it's been pretty universal on the highest level of competition. Like when I say like Diamond and Onyx players that we don't like this map, or there's certain aspects of ranked, how do we make our voices heard so that those statistics, so that feedback is heard to the ranked team and that we can potentially see changes?
Yeah, I'd say one, like the feedback is heard. So it's not falling on deaf ears. I think for us, we are focused on getting more and more content. And you mentioned Plaza earlier. I think that's a great example. And I think we do want to get to the place where the ranked playlist isn't just like any and all the maps that I've ever released, but it is a more kind of curated and competitive experience to where maybe the only reason you don't want to play this map is because it's not in HCS, and less of like, we actually aren't huge fans of this experience. So, I think we need to get more content in there, and that is still what we're hearing loud and clear from all of our players. And it's not just casual versus competitive or anything like that. There are a lot of hardcore ranked players that play, all the time, that want more experiences, and we, I think, owe it to them to continue to deliver on that. So I think if there's feedback about the maps, we want to address that. We already did that with detachment and removing the barrels. And if there's more feedback about the map experience itself, like, I'm positive that the map team will want to go in and address any player feedback that they can. So I think important for players to understand the goals and what we're trying to accomplish. And you mentioned kind of the diamond or the onyx community overall. Like, that is just one portion of that entire ranked playlist, and I don't think it's necessarily fair to call everyone else casual. Again, the ranked playlist has a super high engagement, and we want to keep players playing and loving the game, and we think delivering more content is critical to that.
Right. I think there's been a frustration with the competitive community with the lack of changes or the speed of changes that have happened, right? So we've resorted to using GAs, and last time we talked, you weren't necessarily not a fan of GAs. You said specifically that you felt that it was a failure from 343 that GAs have to exist. Now, we have seen some changes coming into this next season with the Mangler being removed, the pulse rifle being removed, the red rack system coming into place. Are we going to expect to see faster changes when it comes to maps and game types in the ranked and HCS experience compared to last year? Or when the season starts, is this sort of what the format is going to look like for the entire season, when we shouldn't expect changes until the next off season?
So I think, yeah, you're right. In year one, I don't think we kind of met the needs. And, I'm not going to sit here and kind of make empty promises. I think, hold us accountable to what we're producing and doing. And I think so far this year, we've been doing a lot, and the team has been, really busting their butts around the clock to get really what's been weekly updates out the door. And we've got more coming in just a couple weeks with some balance updates. We've got more coming with season 3. And so we feel like we've really taken a huge chunk out of the feedback that's been building up for the last year. And, we want to continue to put our heads down and work and deliver not only on, what are the things that players are complaining about and whatnot, but how do we deliver new and exciting stuff that we think players are going to love. And I think season 3 is going to deliver on a lot of that. So, I'm not going to sit here and make promises of like, oh, every month you're going to have X, Y, Z. But I think what we've shown so far is that we're moving at a faster clip, and there's a lot more work ahead of us, but we're heads down and focused.
I think one of the challenges that has been seen from your team, and I guess 343 as a whole, is finding a proper way to balance the sandbox. I think we're seeing a lot of great changes being made, but once again, with the analogy of one step forward, 2 steps back, sometimes there are changes that I think the competitive community is not too happy with. I'd like to kind of hone in on the commando rifle, right? I think if you were to ask a competitive player, they would say the commando rifle was in a really good spot in season 1. There wasn't really any changes that were needed to it, but yet the competitive community then sees the change to the commando rifle. And from my experience on LAN that I played thus far, and from the scrims that I've been watching, as someone who watches just about as more competitive Halo than 99% of people, I can say with firm resolution that the commando rifle is going to be a problem at Charlotte. It's very good, and it's going to be dominant in those games. Is there an opportunity for these balance changes to be? It's like I want to say that like there might be we might need a difference between what HCS is and what ranked is, because I can understand the need to update the commando rifle to make it easier because it is a hard gun to use. But when we make it too easy, it makes it too easy for professional players. Like, can we see maybe sandbox changes that are only applied, like how the BR has the 2-shot beatdown in HCS, but it has a 3-shot beatdown in the casual playlist? Like, are those changes something that we could see maybe with the commando rifle?
So I think with the commando specifically, you're right. I think when the winter update came out, we really swung the pendulum in one direction, and clearly the pros have gotten way more proficient with the gun. But we are making an update to the commando, which is shipping, I think, after Charlotte with season 3. So, we are listening, we are making adjustments, and a lot of these things, weapon balance is going to be ebbing and flowing and moving, and there's going to be certain equipment or weapons or whatever it might be that are more powerful in some events and some seasons, and then it's going to wane, and other things are going to be more powerful, and it's going to overall feel like things are moving in different directions. I don't think it's going to get to like there's just one locked meta and like, okay, everything's perfectly balanced, don't touch anything to the rest of the time. Like, I think things are going to, the pendulum's going to swing in different directions for all different parts. And I think what you're going to find is like early on when the game launched, players weren't as good with the commando, and then they slowly got better and better, and that's how you had clips of like barcode going off in the super on recharge. So the players are going to also change the way that they play with the game, just that them getting better and the strategies developing, and when new modes come in, it's going to change. So things are going to constantly be in flux, and I just want to set that expectation. And I think ultimately, as long as we're maintaining kind of some core principles in place, that's actually a good thing, because you don't want a stale meta. You don't want things to never change. And I'm not suggesting that's what you're asking for, what the community is asking for, but I want to make sure that stance is super clear. Now, to bring in your other point around, like, are we going to see, differences between the ranked experience and, the rest of the experience with like the commando, for example, similar to how we saw with the BR? I would say it's not necessarily just like a wide goal to do that. I think anytime we make a new weapon or a new piece of equipment, I think it's just efficient to try to use it in across as many different experiences as possible. And there are some things that work great in one and not the other, and some that work great across both. So for example, like there's not a gravity hammer in in HCS, but it's all over the place in ranked, and like that's okay. So I don't think it's a goal to have the things be separate, but I think what you're going to see is that we're over time probably more okay with differences between ranked and competitive. But I know, ranked and the rest of the experience. But I know in talking to the designers, and I agree with their philosophy here, like if there's a difference between weapons in different experiences, like it should be clearly communicated to the players. Like you shouldn't pick up one gun in one experience and then you go in another. It looks the same, but it's behaves drastically different. So, it's a tough thing to try to balance, right? We have a lot of different skill sets across competitive Halo, across Halo Infinite entirely. And, I think our game performs differently based on the skill of the players and the teams. And so, yeah, we're going to do our best to try to address the feedback as we can. And, if something just doesn't kind of fit or work in competitive, like we saw with the Mangler, we're going to throw it in the vault and clean things up a bit and, try to work on and introduce things down the road. So it's all kind of a long-winded answer. I hope that made sense.
No, I think we're getting to the same point. Like I understand what you're saying, but I can see the frustration from the competitive community because it feels as almost that we're replicating the roadmap of Halo 5 a little bit, where in Halo 5, we started the game sprint, AR, radar, right? And then 2016, sprint, AR, radar. And then we kept asking for changes, and then changes were slow. And by the time where Halo 5 got into a really acceptable state in 2018, it felt like it was too late. And I think a lot of competitive players and pro players are just hoping that we don't replicate it, where we get the game to where we really want it to be, but it's 3-4 years down the road when that happens.
Yeah, can I interject on that?
Yeah, go ahead.
I would push back on some of that. I think we ran 2 years of tournaments on those base Halo 5 settings, like you mentioned, and those were all competitive tournaments. We gave away millions of dollars. Those were exciting, high viewership tournaments, and a lot of those actually had higher viewership than year 3 for Halo 5. So I definitely understand the sentiment, and I agree with it. Like, I think where the meta got with the AR and radar over time, it just began to kind of degrade, and we didn't, as a studio, make the necessary updates in time to that, and then we just had to resort to like yanking things out. And I think the competitive community is just so used to yanking things out, and I think it's out of necessity, right? If you imagine, even in the Halo 3 days, like if you're not going to get the balance updates that you need, well, the only thing you can do is like remove them or GA them or whatever it might be. And I think we don't want to start there. Like, like I mentioned, like GAing things is just a sign of like unhealthy part of the competitive balance, and we would rather take the time to try to address it and make sure it fits within the experience. But I also say that, like, not all pro players agree on certain things. Not all competitive players in the playlist or even open bracket players agree on the same things. So, I know, at least in my experience doing surveys with pros and on calls with pros, not everyone agrees on everything. There are certainly some things that pros agree on. I think the Mangler is a good example of that. So I'm not saying it's all or nothing, but I think it's generally more clouded than this like hard consensus line of like, this is bad, this is good. But again, for us, like, we don't want to just like start gutting everything out of the game and turn this into like 3 weapons, 1 power weapon, and a power up. Like, we think Halo Infinite is a really like exciting and fun game. I think generally players feel the same way too. Are there pieces of feedback and complaints about certain things? Like, absolutely. And I think this year we've started, going down that list and addressing what we can. And I think the experience has gotten better this year. I think it will continue to get better. And, we're going to take it step by step.
So I guess my response would be, as someone from, that Halo 5 era, I think it's a little unfair to say that there's correlation. Like, the viewership was higher in 2015 and 2016. Viewership was lower in 2018. Like, I don't think that the settings change like made viewership lower. I don't see like that correlation. And what I would like to see is like, and in that vein, right, it's like, I think what pro players want and what competitive players want is just more malleability with the ability to change the settings and to try stuff, right? I think that's what we're really asking for, is like, okay, can we use a pro series tournament to test out a new version of this map and see how it works? Do people like this better? Is it more fun to play on? Because if we can make small quality of life changes over time, I think it has a tendency to prevent players from leaving the game. And I don't think pro players are asking for drastic changes here and there. I think they're wanting more their ideas to be tested within the wide community so that we can come to general consensuses.
Yeah, I think 2 things. First, I wasn't trying to make a direct correlation between the settings changed, viewership dropped. Like, there are obviously a ton of other circumstances. The game was more new, more players, like whatever, all those things that factored into it. So I just want to make sure that's clear. Like, I don't think there is that direct correlation. I was more so pushing back on the notion that, like, early days Halo 5 were like a failure or like weren't good or whatever it is. So I just wanted to kind of push back on that narrative. Second part, I think we have aligned goals. Like, ultimately, like, we don't have a personal thing that we're trying to go after, regardless of like what players want or dislike or anything like that. Like, we're trying to address the player feedback as best as we can. We're trying to get more players playing more often, more viewers. Like, these are all things I think we're totally aligned on as a community. And we might not agree on the solutions, but I think we're totally aligned on the things that we want to go after and we want to solve. And I think continue to hold us accountable for, making those small tweaks or trying things out, like you mentioned. And one example like this I'll mention is the Bandit that's coming in. Personally, I'm very excited about this gun. I hope the competitive players learn to love it. And if there's feedback, we want to address it over time. But, I think there's real potential for this gun to be kind of more of a fan favorite and maybe filling the gap that I know a lot of the Halo 5 players are missing with, the Magnum, which was a single shot gun, compared to the BR, which is a burst fire gun. So we'll see how it plays out and whatnot, but I'm very excited about getting the Bandit in the game. I think the Sandbox team has done a kick-ass job with it.
Yeah, and I think everyone's excited to see those changes. I just think the pro players do want to see a little bit more of the ability to test things out and to try things. And I think one thing that's been really holding that back has been how the maps are kind of set in stone, right? Like there's no forge capabilities on the prefab maps right now. There's no a way for us to test these changes that we'd like potentially like to see. And you say to hold the team accountable, but I don't think the pros and other competitive players don't feel like that there's a route to hold the team accountable, right? It feels like the feedback's sent into a void, and then you don't know what's being taken into account or what's being tested behind the scenes. And I think, is there a plan to see more transparency behind balance updates, changes to guns, where maybe the wider community has the ability to test? I remember there was like a couple month period in Halo 5 where we could like test on a ranked playlist some of the changes that were going to be made in that 2017 era. I think, is that something that we could see in Halo Infinite?
Yeah, I think a lot of what you saw in the beginning for year one was we really started out wanting to get as much player feedback as we can, and the intention was like, yeah, players don't like this, let's go after it. I think we did a survey with all the competitive players, we gathered all this data, and I think we just missed the bar in terms of being able to make the changes. And the studio's gone under a lot of changes in the last whatever amount of months, and I think we have this more kind of renewed focus on just delivering exactly on the player needs. And so my hope is that what we've kind of delivered on this year and what we've talked about in terms of what's coming in February and what's coming as soon as we could with season 3 is a sign to players that, like, okay, they are finally starting to address the feedback and get into more of a cadence. So I think there's still a lot more work to be done, and I'm not going to sit here and promise like, yeah, by this date we'll do this and that and whatever that might be. But I think hopefully players have really started, and I've seen this kind of feedback already when we announced all that stuff at the beginning of January, that okay, we're now starting to kind of address more stuff, and we just need to put our heads down and keep doing that.
Right. And I guess while we're on the note of like the relationship between 343, the multiplayer team, and HCS, I'd like to go back to the interview that we did in July, and where you talked about how 343 saw HCS's development in a whole and whether they were satisfied with it. If we could roll that tape now.
Objectively speaking, though, when we look at the targets that we set and the metrics that were hit, like HCS has been very successful. We have destroyed our viewership targets. We have crushed the participation targets. Like, by every objective measure that we set out to determine HCS success before the game came out and before HCS launched with Halo Infinite, like, we have beat all of our targets. So from a studio perspective, Halo Esports has been very successful.
Right. So I bring that up because, season 1's over, and I kind of want to get an idea of what the goals that 343 is putting on HCS this season is. Like, what makes a successful season 2 in the eyes of 343, so that there isn't any uncertainty of a season of a next season of HCS or the future of Halo Esports.
So for us, our goals and what we're supposed to deliver to the studio and to the franchise hasn't changed. So we still look at viewership and live viewership, how many people are watching all of the events and competitions and broadcasts that we have. Then there's participation and attendance. So how many people are playing in the online competitions, how many people are signing up for events, how many people are attending as fans. And then we look at overall just kind of sentiment and relevancy. So are people talking positively about HCS? Is it getting on people's radar? Are we trending on Twitter? Like, whatever those kind of metrics are, like how high up on the Twitch charts are we? Generally kind of a favorable outlook on HCS and Halo because of HCS. And then monetization is the other one. So obviously, I talked about running a sustainable business for HCS. We work with sponsors to bring in revenue for the league. We also, and I'd say more importantly, focus on providing opportunities for teams to earn revenue. They have the skins in the game. We've given them more opportunities in year 2 to earn more revenue. So, ensuring that they're able to monetize and get revenue in the Halo ecosystem and make this a sustainable business for themselves as well are other things that we look at. So from a high level standpoint, our goals haven't changed. What we're going after, obviously we're in year 2 of the game. Things are different than when we first launched, but we think we have a roadmap that's going to be able to accomplish these goals, and we want to continue to build on our successes from year 1.
Yeah, and with that, I think I want to kind of transition the topic more into like the overall health of HCS and some of the concerns that I think the community has been having. And I haven't been trying to ignore chat all day. I've been seeing they've been very active about one thing, Tashi, and that it's about the anti-cheat and what we can do in the HCS to prevent cheating, because right now it's probably the most hot button issue in the game. And I'm not necessarily talking about an anti-cheat from 343 down, but just for HCS. I believe on Twitter we saw a huge push for the Faceit anti-cheat. I mean, Faceit's an HCS partner. When it comes to these events, I think a lot of the community want to see the HCS use the anti-cheat program that Faceit has available throughout their own program within the event. Is that something that's on HCS's radar? Is that a plan for the future, or how are you guys feeling about it right now?
Yeah, I think overall it is really important to us. And I think, we talked about consoles in the open bracket, but that also helps mitigate potential cheating, obviously, which is way more accessible on PC. But it is something important. Last year, we've required players to stream at certain parts in the tournament. We're going to do the same this year. And, I think, and to the specific topic around the Faceit anti-cheat, we're exploring what the in-game integration could look like with Faceit. I don't think the priority right now is the anti-cheat thing specifically. It's more so the operation of the online tournaments, but right now that's all just investigative stuff right now, and the studio's been focused on obviously bigger pieces of feedback that we have had. But yeah, I guess I can't sit here today and make promises about what's coming and when and anything like that, but it is important for the studio, and there are things that the teams are looking at internally.
Right. And I guess you talked about maybe having the Faceit anti-cheat become in-game integrated. Is that like necessary for an anti-cheat to be used in an HCS online tournament? Like, is the solution of having each individual player downloading the anti-cheat, using it separately as a third-party application to the game, too much of a bottleneck in the eyes of HCS? Because like you talked about, it's all about getting the tournaments well ran. That's like top priority. But do you think the benefits of having that anti-cheat outweigh potentially the tournament being set back a little bit of time?
Well, I don't think it's as clear cut as just making a decision and suddenly kind of everything works as intended. I think especially with anti-cheat and PC, there's a lot that goes into this, and I think it is important to us. We're going to look into each avenue that we can. I want to clarify one thing. The Faceit anti-cheat, I think you had just mentioned that like it is something that we are investigating or working on or whatnot. I want to clarify that that is not one thing. And our focus right now with Faceit is obviously launching all these online competitions, but investigating from an operations standpoint where we could make the experience better. But as a studio, we do have an anti-cheat for Halo Infinite. We've talked about it in the past, and definitely hear and understand the feedback. And it is something that the studio is aware of that feedback, and we have a support team that handles any cases that come up. We work with Faceit, Esports Engine, and Richie on the team deals with any investigations that come up on a case-by-case basis. So, we do take this seriously, but it isn't a one size fits all solution.
And I mean, I think we hear that. I just like one of those things where the community probably wants at least like a trial basis of something. I think they're desperately wanting to try something, because one of the main things that's impacting the community these days is, as soon as one person gets accused, it feels as if it's a huge tarnish on their reputation, and it doesn't feel as if the channels are there to be 100% clear whether they are cheating or they aren't. And I think that clarity is something that the community wants. And I guess there's not really a question to that. It's just,
I understand it.
I think that's just something that the community is really, really gunning for.
Yeah.
And to move forward, I wanted to talk about, it's always a concern with esports. Like, is this a bubble? What's going on with the esports? What's the future of HCS? And I guess now with the economy taking its downward trend that we've seen through the last few months, like how is the economy and the current downtrend of esports kind of impacting what you and the HCS team are doing? And has it like shifted any of your long-term goals in order to mitigate this recession?
Yeah, I think ultimately at the end of the day, like HCS is a business and we need to run it in a sustainable way. And I think, we talked about earlier a lot of the changes we made in the name of that. And, that allows us to ensure that in an economic downturn or whatever it might be, like, this bubble of when esports changing, it sets us up better to be more sustainable long term. So the intent and the goal is to have HCS year in, year out. But at the end of the day, it's not something that we can just like rest on our laurels about. And we are making conscious decisions to improve on the things that we've done in year one and do things more cost effectively and more efficiently and hit on our goals harder. And, I think a lot of the changes that you've seen reflect that. I think we've done some changes for how we work with our partnered teams, because we know, running an esports team business is also really difficult. And so we've thought of ways that, HCS and Halo can support teams more. And so, it is something that even before this economic downturn was really important to us. It's how do we ensure we are set up long-term to continue to run Halo year in and year out. And look, I've also personally been part of the community for a long time. I started watching in the Halo 2 days, and I still remember when Halo Reach was not on the MLG circuit and there was a lot of turbulence and uncertainty. And, we've been part of this for like Halo 5. We had grassroots things as well. So like, I'm personally, it's very important that, Halo is here kind of year in, year out, and we're able to run the business in a way that allows us to do that, economic downturn or not. So yeah, I think that is a key kind of focus for us.
Right. So I guess the biggest question to follow that up is like, if HCS becomes non-sustainable, or I guess isn't as profitable as 343 would like it, like what's the biggest risk, right? Are we at risk of, like, let's say the entire esport environment goes through a massive downtrend? Is Halo on the chopping block for those potential changes?
Well, we just announced a full year roadmap, so
let's go. Thumbs up on that.
we're here. Like, we're gonna have the World Championship in Seattle, so like, Halo Esports is here, so we're we're gonna have a great season, and we've got more support coming in the game, more updates on the way. The team is super heads down. I think, I'm confident in the kind of direction that the studio is heading now, and the things that we're able to deliver. But ultimately, again, we just need to be heads down doing our work. And that's what's ultimately going to be the thing that matters in the end. Like, I can sit here and say X, Y, Z, but it doesn't matter. It's ultimately what happens in the hands of the players when they play the game, and also the eyes of the viewers when they watch. So, yeah.
Well, I think we've been on the negative for long enough. I kind of want to go into a little more of a positive spin and talk about something that kind of impacted us at LVT Halo specifically, and that's the relaunch of the HCS Grassroots program. Can you walk us through like what does that entail? Like, what does it mean to be an HCS Grassroots partner? What do you see the future integration between Grassroots partner and the HCS in this next season?
Well, first, congratulations on making it into the program. We're really excited to have you guys, and I think based on probably what the chat is saying, long time overdue. So I don't disagree with that, and thank you guys for everything that you've done, and I know are planning to do with Halo. So the vision for the Grassroots program is essentially, when it comes to streamers and tournament operators and people who do both and make content, um, we think that's a critical part of the Halo ecosystem, not just HCS or esports specifically. And there are people who are, devoting their lives to putting on great events and, streaming every day and creating YouTube content for their fans and their audience. And generally we want to lift those up and shine a spotlight on this diverse group of people who are contributing so much to the Halo community. And that's kind of like the vision and the spirit of like why this program exists. And it started, I think, back in 2018 is when we announced it, and we had all these creators and we started adding kind of little by little, and we had some tournament operators. And when Halo Infinite came out, we kind of put the program on the back burner, I'd say, because we were just so focused on the main HCS league as a team. And I think now Divian specifically, as well as with the support of Lalo on the team, have done a really great job of kind of rallying again for a second effort behind the program, and getting these creators more and more involved. I think it's awesome to see them at the events, being part of our show matches, streaming to all their fans, co-streaming the event. We're really excited to, rebrand the league, or sorry, the program, open up applications again, bring more faces into it, and just kind of grow this group that is really in service of the broader community. And we want to continue to grow how we support that. So, it starts with things like promoting content and hosting on Twitch after big events, and having them out during show matches at our majors, or Twitch drops, or something new for Halo Infinite that we've seen have a really big impact. So we're going to continue to do that. I know Divian is super focused on, every month there being some sort of community play date that everyone can rally behind, have it be a really entertaining experience. I think with Forge coming out, there's more exciting opportunities for creators to, have these really fun, unique experiences. So that's called kind of ultimately what the spirit of the program is there's a lot of great people such as yourselves who are, devoting so much of your time and your effort into supporting this community. And, we want to kind of help you reach a bigger audience and help you do more of what you love.
And I guess with that, you said applications are open again. Like, what are you looking for in the next crop of creators and tournament organizers to add to the program?
Big one for us is consistency. So, have you been streaming or running tournaments for a good while? Are you building an audience, or at least doing the things that it takes to build an audience? We don't just look at like, okay, who's got the most viewership, bring them in. There are a lot of people that we brought into the program that had like 10, 20 viewers on Twitch, and, they were able to be part of it, and we were able to help lift them up. So the consistency is a big one. Obviously, playing mostly Halo is important. Big shocker there. And I think the last one, which is probably the most critical, is, are you fostering a positive community and a positive impact on the franchise? I think if what you do is, trying to tear down the community or tear down the game or tear down the studio, there's not really a place in the program for that. But if you're out there day in, day out, fostering a positive experience, I still remember the first time I went to Oath Stream to check it out, and it was like the most positive chat that I've ever been a part of. Everyone was so supportive of each other, cracking jokes and having fun, and just like celebrating the game and celebrating Oath and everything that was going on. She was just such a perfect candidate for this. So, more kind of people like that are kind of what we're looking for in the community and for the program.
Yeah, and I guess one of the biggest criticisms I've seen of the HCS grassroots program, when it comes to the tournament organizer side, is like lack of monetary support. Right. I think there was a probably maybe a misconception or maybe something that that was mixed up along the way, where I think a lot of people expected if you were put into the tournament organizer HCS grassroots program that maybe prize pools would be paid for or there would be more active tournaments. I feel like that's really been the biggest downfall so far. Is I don't think, I shout out to, GT Halo, Australia Halo, SWAT Nation, and if I'm missing one, I'm sorry. I think I'm missing one, and I feel bad about it. But I Europa Halo, there we go. What kind of support are you expecting to see for these tournament organizers and the future tournament organizers that you're adding into the program, and to kind of mitigate some of that disappointment that we saw?
Yeah, I think that's fair to say, especially when we launched. We had the kind of like smaller community tournament operators, but we were also helping fund like the UGC event that was taking place and a DreamHack thing. So, yeah, I think that's fair to say. I think for going forward, I think our focus in terms of financial sustainability is going to be more so around um, how can we involve sponsors or let's even like teams, right? How can we connect, let's say, one of the teams with the tournament operator to run a broadcast that we're doing in 2023. So I think it's more connecting dots that way. 1+1 = 3. Hey, sponsor, we've got this community group that can run awesome tournaments for you. And, make the introduction, have them handshake and kind of go run with it. Same with the teams. Like, I think it's going to be more so looking for opportunities that way instead of, just directly subsidizing the efforts, because I think, ultimately, our focus is the main kind of HCS league and program, and putting all of our resources that we can into that and making sure that's as successful, because obviously, it's a huge, that's our main accountability as a team. And it's a huge commitment, but it is important to us. I think we need to get crafty in terms of how we can help the smaller TOs find sustainability, and we're open to having conversations and ideas. I think Divian and Lalo do a good job of having like regular meetings with all the different partners. There's a pretty active Discord where people can chat, and I know when we're at events, like, we're always there. And I know Divian and Lalo would be, Divian focuses more on the tournament operator stuff than Lalo, but I know he would be happy, and he was part of GT Halo years ago. So, and he ran Microsoft Store events. So, Divian is very in tune with kind of the grassroots community. And like I said, like, our goal is to help kind of prop these up and make them running as long as we can. But, the business model isn't exactly as easy of a nut to crack.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Tashi, I mean, before we go on a break, I want to go on a break. When we come back, we're going to talk all about the HCS Partnership Program, all the questions people have about it. Before we go to break, though, is there anything else that you want to bring up about, the ranked experiences, the grassroots program, or just the overall health of HCS?
No, I think I touched on each of those. I would say as a studio and a team, we're just super heads down working on the game and delivering the best we can to fans and players. And, that's just what we need to do and what we're going to continue to do.
Welcome back, guys. This is going to be the last section of our interview. We're going to go into the partnership program. Welcome back, Tashi, to the program. And Tashi, a nice hoodie that you got on right there, representing one of the HCS partnership teams.
Poster, and a straight
poster
for now.
Firm on the wall.
No more tattered shirt, representing one of our partner teams for this next segment.
Hey, one of the better merch drops. But I want to start with I guess the obvious question of teams leaving the HCS Partnership Program. We saw G2 officially announce their departure. Other teams not officially announcing their departure, but assumed to be leaving the HCS Partnership Program. The whole goal of the HCS Partnership Program was for long sustained success for orgs to be in Halo. What changed after season 1?
Yeah, so I think overall, when we look at the HCS Team Partnership Program, it was a really big success, right? We had some of the biggest teams in esports in HCS. They were paying salaries for players, obviously, bringing in lots of fans, and just creating a lot to kind of root around and root for, for the league. And I think most of the teams are still in. We were able to add some more, but I think it's important to note that, like, even though the program as a whole was a success, it doesn't mean that every single team kind of felt that same level of success. So it's a spectrum. Some teams did better than others, and for the future of their business, some of these teams decided to go separate ways. But I think where we'll net out, it will be pretty much the same as what we had in year one, and I think not all of the teams are also leaving for the same reasons. One in particular, like, it seems like they may have left other games as well. So, esports team industry is a tough business, and we're committed to doing what we can to provide a good investment in Halo that will earn for the teams based on their goals and try to find financial sustainability. So I think we largely did that in year one, and I think we have plans to do even more in year two.
I think people hear the term partnership and they think as that there should be like contracts involved in that. I'm not sure how much you can talk about it, but there was a lot given from the HCS side to partnership teams, and then for partnership teams to leave, I think it left a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths. And like, I think a lot of people maybe expected contractual obligations that teams would need to be in the HCS for extended periods of time. Can you talk about what more of the promises from the organization side to keep their commitment to Halo and how that intertwines with the HCS the HCS Partnership Program?
Yeah, so I think in year one, it was a new game. We knew a lot of things had potential to change. We were going to learn a lot. So we intentionally kept it to a kind of 1 year with the teams. And they are contracted, just to make that super clear. I will admit we were kind of light on the requirements for the teams. And I think you saw what you saw, which was, some teams were kind of all in. They had a booth at every event and, yada, yada. And others, we're not as kind of all in as that. And I think going forward, you're always going to see a spectrum because each team's business is different and they all have different players and different goals. And, I don't think you're ever going to see the same level. But we were very aware of the fans' feedback of like, well, what does it mean to be a partner team? Why are some teams doing more or less than others? And what we've done in year two is essentially kind of raise the floor for what it means to be a partner team in HCS. We do have a blog coming out next week that will detail a lot of this, and we're being super transparent so that fans know exactly what to expect. And if they feel like teams are not kind of holding up their end of the bargain, then it's clear kind of what's going on and what's expected. So some of the things, and I'll talk, high level real quick, and then we'll drill into more specifics. But at a high level, the way we're thinking about it is the teams obviously need to have financial kind of sustainability in the league and be able to see revenue year in, year out so they can continue their investment. And so we thought about, what are the different things that teams can do in order to cultivate a fan base, because ultimately we felt like that was the first step. Is teams need to be integrated with the Halo community, not just the HCS community, the broader Halo community. They need to build themselves a fan base so that whenever they post a tweet about their team, they have got people ready to go watch. Their players who stream are also, they're getting fans from the organization. When they go to an event, they have a booth. They're able to, draw in fans, sell merch and all those things. So cultivating that fan base is like kind of the first step. And then we thought about, okay, well, what are the different things that teams can do and invest in to cultivate a fan base? And then for each of those aspects, how can we provide monetization opportunities around that so that teams can then earn revenue? And some of that is, provided by us, and some of that would be provided by the broader ecosystem, aka fans. And So then those particular things have been kind of injected into the agreement, and the blog will kind of detail more. But some of the things that you can expect are like um, tournaments and broadcasts. So the teams are going to be required to do some amount of tournaments, and they can be, hardcore 4v4 tournaments. They can be FFA tournaments. They can be 2v2, 1v1. They can be streamer events. They could be really anything. We're not putting any kind of restrictions on a format perspective. And really, the ask is that there's content and kind of fan engagement there. And in terms of monetization, we give the teams basically free reign in terms of sponsorships and how they monetize off of that broadcast. And so, if they have a sponsor that conflicts with the league and they want to use that sponsor for that tournament, they can go for it. Even like the quadrant and phase ones that we announced, they have full sponsorship reign over that. We're not taking any of the revenue. We're essentially just requiring that they put in the investment and effort to build this product that will garner a fan base and hopefully money as well. And we're doing what we can to enable the success of that. So we're going to give them Twitch drops to bring in more viewers, and we're obviously giving them the sponsorship rights, which is a really big deal. So that's one of the components, and there are others, including merchandise rights and doing rev share on that. Obviously, there's the in-game skins, which was kind of the hero of the program in year one. It will continue to be a really big component. I'm excited to say that we'll have 4 bundles for each team in year 2 rather than the 3 in year 1. We'll still have the champions bundle that will rev share with the team that wins the world championship. So a lot of people bought the laurels right when Worlds ended. That was rev shared with Optic. We'll do something like that for year 2. So there are kind of components of that. And I think long story short is you can expect a minimum bar from each of the teams, and they have the opportunity and definitely the desire to take that to another level. And our hope is that they have a bunch of diverse income streams from Halo that then allows them to continue to invest year in, year out. And we took a big leap with also the events that we're doing with Optic and SSG, and we hope to continue that going forward as well. So the teams are a really critical part of the program.
To push on some of the promises that you're talking about, right? The tournaments coming into this next season. Does that mean we should expect to see the roadmap kind of change a little bit? Should we expect to see other big online tournaments like the phase and quadrant one at the beginning of this year being added to the roadmap later on?
You might. Again, the teams have freedom from a format perspective. So, if they're like, hey, HCS, we noticed, after the World Championship, there's nothing really going on. We want to host a 4v4 tournament, whatever. Like, sure, go for it. Or if they're like, hey, actually, we just brought on this big streamer and they're a big Halo fan, and we thought, oh, it'd be really cool to do something around Forge and other streamers. Yeah, go for it. Like, we're not putting a real restriction on what the teams can do. I think for us with like the phase and the quadrant was us looking at the roadmap and saying, hey, this is really a good spot to kind of bolster things and add some more weight to some of these tournaments. Hey, phase, hey, quadrant, do you guys want to be part of this? Do you want to broadcast it? And they were like all in, yes, let's go do it. So there might be more opportunities that come up that way. Again, there might be more kind of streamer focused things. Like, we're not putting a restriction on what that is, because ultimately, again, like each team is different. They all have different strengths. They have different passions. Maybe they want to strategically go into different areas of the community and pockets of the community that others are not. So we don't want to just provide this like cookie cutter thing. And I think the cool thing about each of the partner teams having this freedom, and this extends to like everything, how they do the merch, the design of the skins, even the booth experiences that they have at events. Like, you will get kind of unique and creative experiences from each of the teams because they're putting their own flavor, and we're not coming in saying, hey, here's a cookie cutter approach to do everything.
Right. Talk about booths. Is that going to be more of a requirement this year, where we see each team represented at LAN?
So it is. there is a requirement around booths, but it's mainly focused around like more fan engagement. So, obviously all of the events are in the United States, and we have partners around the world. And so I don't think like it would be fair to say, hey, Quadrant, hey, Navi, you've got to spend 3x as much money to have a booth here just because we require it. And so we're open to teams coming to the table with, hey, we maybe can't have a booth at this event, but we want to do this other cool experience, either digital or in person, maybe somewhere else. So we're giving the teams the flexibility because, again, like we don't want to give them just like a cookie cutter thing to go after that maybe isn't as financially sustainable. So we're giving teams kind of more freedom in that regard.
I mean, I guess that makes sense. I do like to hear that the floor is being raised, right? But what about the ceiling as well, right? We saw a lot of cool activations that were done at the end of season 1 with merchandise. Is there any big splashes that we're going to see with some activations in season 2 that is going to increase the ceiling and, kind of raise the expectation of the Halo community?
Well, I think you're seeing it with the Optic Major and the SSG event. And being able to really take things to a whole other level is, I think, showing how important and where the ceiling could go with this partnership program. And in terms of merch, yeah, we'll do more of that. We thought that was really successful at Worlds. The teams, I think, earned a good amount of revenue, and we want to give more opportunities around there. I think there's something to be said about like, well, Optics hosting an event. Is there some cool merch that they could do with HCS? I think that's a cool idea. We'll see what comes to fruition, but there are going to be different opportunities. I think we're also giving teams the freedom to like line up these different activations together. So, they could, for example, let's just use like SSG because I'm wearing their hoodie, but they could decide, hey, we want to sell some crazy new merch at the event in Salt Lake City. We want to also line up maybe a qualifier for some online thing, or maybe an in-person streamer tournament or something. Like maybe they want to take all their different requirements and line them up in a certain way that makes a lot of sense. So now they've got gear that's branded for the event, and they've got this cool activation that's happening there. Like, we want to give teams the freedom to think creatively and line up the kind of business elements as they see fit that they think makes sense for the business, and give them the freedom to really own that creatively, and just let them kind of go with it. Like, we don't want to be precious about like exactly what they do. We're kind of holding them accountable to like, hey, listen to the fans, pay close attention to the game, and really be opportunistic in terms of how you invest in the Halo ecosystem.
There's a lot of orgs that are kind of on the outside looking in, wanting to become partnership ready, like G1, Native, are a couple that come to my mind. Shopify Rebellion being one of those orgs. And I think we've seen a huge departure of teams after they didn't get partnership in season 1. What's your piece of advice? What do you want to see from orgs coming up this next season for them to be admitted into the HCS Partnership Program?
Yeah, there's a few things to touch on here. I would say, one, I think the biggest impact we can have on the teams, I would say both partnered and non-partnered, is keeping our heads down and focusing on the game and delivering on the best experiences for players that are going to bring players back into the game and keep them playing and super satisfied and just enjoying the experience. That's ultimately, the game is at the center of this entire thing, and so that's where we'll have the biggest impact. In terms of the partnership program and where we're looking at for future applications, right now we're going to take a kind of wait and see approach. We want the season to play out more. We obviously have more work on the game to do and more updates that are going to be coming out. We want to see how all those perform, and then we'll make a decision later in the season on, hey, is this the right time to open up applications again? It's really important for us that like the teams in the partnership program find success before we just kind of like blast it out open to everybody. And I think the last thing I'll mention is for teams that are kind of out on the outside hoping to get in, I think it's important to keep a lens of, what can I do for the Halo ecosystem versus what can Halo do for me? And that kind of mindset shift is, I think, what you see in the teams that we have partnered today. And I still remember talking to, folks like Quadrant and Complexity when we were doing the applications, and that was like something like very clear and resounding. And when we bring new ideas to them now, they're kind of all in and they bring stuff to us. So I'm not saying the partner teams that didn't get in don't have that, because obviously there were only a few slots available anyway. So we had to make those hard decisions. But to answer your question directly, what advice would I give to teams on the outside? Yeah, I would think about, what can I bring to the Halo ecosystem more than just fielding a roster? What kind of value can I bring to the Halo fans and Halo Esports fans? And I think that will kind of open up opportunities and ideas and different activations and things that will, put you in a good place to get into future partnership openings. But again, we're not going to get to a place where we're just going to like overnight go from like 8 to 16 and like, okay, all of you come in. So it's going to be a fight, and you're going to have to beat out the other teams if you want to get in.
You talked about there being 4 drops this year for current partner teams. When can we expect the first drop to land?
Sorry, what drops?
Not drops, or skins.
Oh, I thought you said forge. Sorry, you said 4.
No, 4. Like there's 4 skin drops right this year.
yeah.
So when should we expect the first one? Then what's the timeline on the next ones coming through?
So we'll share the timeline for the rest coming through, but the first one will be season 3. We're going to, and that's March 7th, by the way. And then I'm going to tease some stuff for Charlotte, if you'll allow me. We are going to reveal them all at Charlotte. And, if you're in attendance, maybe you'll get a chance to play season 3 before everybody else. So just saying, Charlotte is going to be a pretty awesome event to attend. And if you're watching at home, maybe there's going to be some cool stuff to watch about season 3. So we're excited about season 3, and, it'll be part of the Charlotte experience through and through. But yeah, to answer your question, March 7th, season 3, first team bundle.
I'd love to see that. Hope that we can see some more at Charlotte.
They look insane, by the way.
And I'm happy for it. Is it cross-core compatible again? Can I put it on everything, Tashi?
Well, you'll be able to like customize it like you were with the playoff bundles. So if you want to like put a different helmet on or shoulder piece or whatever. But I think the thing that I'm most excited about is we've given teams more tools to customize them.
Shout out.
So the teams are able to include like new patterns. So you'll see more of their brand come through in the items, which is really cool. So that will continue. I'm not going to talk about what's coming down the line right now. There'll be a time and place for that, but we're excited for this first bundle.
Hey, if I was going to give you my one suggestion,
hit me.
Team skin, like partnership skins for drops. You know what I'm saying? Specific skins that are made for drops for their big events. That way, the casual fan who's not really that into it, they see the drop, they get it, then all of a sudden they're like, damn, I'm an Optic fan now because I got this Optic skin that I got for free for watching Twitch. I'm just saying, I'm putting it out there. I'm putting it all out there.
That's a cool idea.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Hey, my line's up. If 343 is ever looking for a consultant, I have an exorbitant fee ready to go, Tashi.
Sorry, you're breaking up. I didn't hear any of that.
I'm so sorry. We'll have to talk about it at a later date. The one thing that I did want to bring up when it comes to new organizations coming in is regional representation, right? So we see EU in North America. We haven't seen any partner teams from Australia or Mexico, and this was a huge question that a lot of the Mexican competitors were DMing me. Was visas have been a huge issue for them, finding finding money for orgs to help fund their way to North American tournaments. I think there's a lot of uncertainty in that region. They were really hoping for a land. That's not going to happen this season. They were hoping to maybe see some more representation for them within the HCS Partnership Program, adding some Latin American organizations to the program. Is that going to be a priority to increase the diversity within the program when it comes to regional support?
I think we'd like to. We made a conscious effort to look at Europe and wanting to bolster that further. I think in terms of regions, Europe is definitely kind of second behind NA. So, and I think broadly speaking in esports, that's generally where you're going to find the most established businesses and teams in North America and Europe, as opposed to Mexico and Australia. So I think part of it is also a product of that. I definitely empathize with the kind of situation that the teams in those regions are facing, and so we're always going to try to give those teams a fair shot at it. But again, like I think it's also important to note that just like you saw some teams leave after year one, like the partnership program is not like a silver bullet to like fix all your problems and like your business is now 10x profit, like all this stuff. Like it does require work, it does require ingenuity, it requires an established fan base, it requires a full staff to do all these things. Like there's a lot of stuff at a baseline that these teams need to already have established and bring to the table. And even for those that do, it doesn't guarantee any success. And so we need to be really thoughtful around which teams we're bringing in. So I'd love to have more teams from Mexico in there, or Australia, New Zealand. Like I definitely, again, like empathize with the situation those players are in, but we have to keep the long-term sustainability of the entire league in mind when we make the decisions that we do. And I know sometimes in the short term, it could look like, oh, you don't care about this certain region or whatnot. Like it's in an effort to ensure that Halo Esports is here year in, year out for, here until as long as we can go. So, that's ultimately the lens that we look at all decisions. So there are short-term kind of sacrifices that we make in an effort to, maintain this ecosystem for the long term.
You talked about the contracts for season 1 being 1 year long. Has the contracts for season 2 also been a year, or are we seeing more of a long-term commitment from these organizations?
I wouldn't look at it that way. It is 1 year, but it's less about like the teams not wanting to commit. I think it's for us still kind of wanting to ensure that we are adjusting things as time goes. And I would say if we signed a 2-year agreement at launch, we probably wouldn't have been able to do all of the new things that we're doing in year 2. And so I think we're also trying new things with the program. We're seeing what works, what doesn't work, and we're kind of adjusting as we go. And I think once we get to like a more stable kind of, I don't want to say vision, we have a vision, but it's a more stable understanding of like what's working, what's not working, then we do have ambitions to go after, multi-year with the teams.
All right, well, Tashi, I think this is a great place to end it. If you have any comments that you want to make, any message that you want to give to the community right now, I think we're at a great stopping point.
Cool. Well, first I want to say thank you, Tools and Brandon, and everyone at LVT for not only just being the awesome rock stars that you are in the community, but for having me on the show. I think always appreciate the opportunity to speak with you guys and speak directly to the community in this way. My hope is everyone in the community appreciated this interview and this conversation, and hopefully answered at least a good amount of the questions that you all had. I think important to note that we're all one community, right? And the more that we can kind of line up together and push forward in the same direction, the more success that we will all have in this ecosystem. And for us, you heard me speak about our goals and what our vision is. Like, we don't have egos about this. Like, we're trying to grow the community and the game and everything as much as we can, and that will always be kind of our North Star. So I would say keep us honest. Our team will be at the events, happy to talk more. I'm also available obviously on Twitter, and we're just going to be heads down working on delivering the best kind of game and HCS experience that we can. So thank you everybody for the continued support, and we're excited for this roadmap that we just announced. So we'll see you all in Charlotte.
Awesome. Well, guys, that does it for our interview today. If you guys want to go see, keep updated with Tashi on Twitter, make sure you go follow him. And you know what? If you liked me, go follow me on Twitter. Bigger number, better person. I think that's how it works. I'm trying to get to 1,500. Maybe we can get there. That would be awesome. If someone has a link, just link it in the chat, whatever it is. And hopefully I was able to get through most of the questions that you guys had today. Obviously, we hope to do this more often, just try to keep in touch with the development team at 343 and HCS and kind of get an idea of what the direction that we're moving in this scene is. And I hope to be able to keep providing that for you guys in the future. If you ever have any questions or anything that you are wanting to know more about, feel free to reach out to me. My DMs are usually open, and I like to read through them. So I thank you guys for the stream today. Shout out to the team that helped all this happen. Brandon, aka Louis V Titan, was behind the stage all day today, making sure that we are able to get our reference material in hand and to keep this interview flowing. Shout out to the mods that did excellent work today, like Six Ruin and Nighty Night. And then we do have already lots of notes written about this entire interview. We're hoping to put out a written piece on the socials tomorrow from Mr. Snow, and to get this interview up on YouTube as soon as possible. But once again, thank you everyone for watching. That does it for our interview today. Tomorrow we have drops 1v1 on Honda Cup. Come show out. I know it's once. We wanted 4v4. It got pushed back a week. You can ask Tashi about it. Oh wait, I did. You can watch the VOD. Do something about that. But we do have drops tomorrow. Come watch the 1v1. It'll be fun. Magic and Mikowski are back. I'm going to be casting with Tony. Always a lot of fun to watch the ones and see the chat rage at people playing slow. That being said, we are done for today. Drops tomorrow. And have a good night, everyone.